On the 20th of August, I officially entered the 11th year of me being a furry. And within those 11 years, my love as well as appreciation for this beautiful community has only increased. And today I want to talk about why this fandom is so important to so many of us, and why we love it so much. We will begin with the social, the community side of this discussion first. The furry community started during the late 70s, coming out of the, at the time, underground sci-fi scene. We were born from a geeky, and as far as many were considered, a weird place that also happened to be pretty queer. The fandom promoted expressions of people's true selves and tradition, a tradition that is still standing to this very day. And as the years went by and the furry fandom grew, more of us began to love this fandom in ways that can be rather difficult to explain at times, especially with mere words. I guess the closest way of describing it would be a secondary home. But how come? Well, for this, we will need to take a look at your average furry first. Your average furry is someone with an interest in anthropomorphic animals. That much is plainly obvious. They are usually nerdy and creative. They don't have a whole lot of experience and are likely to be on the spectrum and or queer. For those whom are on the spectrum, the furry fandom can be incredible. I already have a video dedicated for furries and autism, so I'll only add the important parts here.
For autistic individuals, it can be very difficult to make eye contact with new people, especially when we meet each other. And for many, touching someone with a hug or a handshake can be very uncomfortable. Many end up having to force themselves to do these rituals as not to be rude. But putting on a fursuit will also put a barrier between you and others, making it much more comfortable. For intimate things such as cuddling and so on, many prefer to be in a suit or interacting with a suitor than a non-suitor. Because obviously when you are around a big fluffy man-sized dog, or someone wearing a mask, you don't feel as anxious and awkward as you would otherwise. Autism comes with lots of strengths, at least just as many weaknesses as well. Many people on the spectrum have a tendency to be more logical, artistic, and honest, but social skills are our biggest weakness. Obviously, the level of it depends on what percentage of autistic you are, or Asperger's you are. I would argue that the biggest reason for why autism and the furry fandom mixes so well with each other is because furries are accepting of non-neurotypicals. We admit that we ourselves are different, so we accept the fact that humanity comes in many assorted flavors. Autism is only one of them. Autistics are used to wearing a mask to cope with neurotypicals. Wearing a fursuit is just another mask. Any unusual behavior, such as behavior traits such as tics, slimming, and so on, can be passed off as an animalistic thing, or something that is accurate to the character. Us humans have a great need to pack bond, and will always gravitate towards other humans with which we share a genuine interest in or a common goal in.
Now, according to the CDC, in 2021, over 75 million people are autistic. At first, this may sound gigantic, until you do a little bit of maths and calculations, and then you will realize that this, and I'm not kidding, is about 1% of the entire world population. And they're all spread out around the world. Combine other external as well as internal factors, and us autistics can feel extremely lonely and alienated. Fur Science had made a study a while ago, which I will link down below, and the results, although not perfect, does give a good idea on how autistic the fandom is. For so many years, so many of us autistic individuals felt so lonely and alienated. For some of us, it got so bad that we genuinely began to feel like outcasts and misfits of whatever society we were a part of. The same applies to people that can be considered weird. However, that topic will be made into a separate detailed video, thus I will simply leave it at that. Point is, when we interact with the furry fandom and begin to notice, wait a minute, you're also autistic? And as time goes by, and we meet more autistic and weird people, that feeling of being alone and alienated begins to decrease quite a lot. Because we get to see with our own eyes and hear with our own ears that we aren't alone after all. There is an entire community filled with people like us. Obviously not the entirety, but a massive amount of people like us that we can interact with. And once that mental cage of alienation is broken, it feels incredible. And speaking of breaking chains, the furry fandom helps so many queer individuals understand and discover themselves as well. Of course, how come? Well, let's get into it. Now, although the furry community and LGBTQ+ community are their own separate communities, overlapping between the two communities is a commonplace. And there is good reason for that. Now, the obvious reason is because of how particularly understanding, tolerant, and accepting, as well as just non-judgmental, the furry fandom is. That's the obvious reason. But the less obvious side would be OCs and role-playing, as well as fursuiting to a certain extent. The obvious part of this would be the non-judgmental and accepting attitude of the fandom, as I said before, allowing queer folk to let the queer side of themselves to come out more, helping to lighten the weight. The part that isn't so obvious would be role-playing as well as fursuiting. See, when someone is not sure about their own sexuality, and as such, having people that you can roleplay with and or having a fursuit that can be both the same and opposite, as well as having people that are open about it in the fandom, being able to talk to them about it to get a second-hand opinions and thoughts and so on. It helps you have essentially test runs to see how you feel about things and help your journey of self-discovery. Now let's get to the creative aspect. I have never seen another community/fandom have such a concentration of creatives before. From artists to writers, to music to animation. From making comics to making figures, fursuits, clothing, like you name it, we got it. The amount of creative work is one of the biggest reasons why the furry fandom is able to create content for itself, by itself, and not have to constantly rely or depend on some random corpo scum. No, they can actually just, sustain themselves pretty well. And for many artists, the furry fandom is a safe haven, not only for artistic displays of skill, but also to form a fan base and acquire potential customers. All of this also helps artists further develop their skills and even learn other styles at the same time. And it opens up the opportunity to earn money from their skills via commissions. And keep in mind, when you work a job that you enjoy, you don't feel like you're working a job. But instead, you feel like you're just engaging in a hobby that you enjoy and you get paid for enjoying. It's a win-win if I ever heard of one. Now let's get to the kindness of the fandom. The furry fandom still possesses some of the most kind people out there, whom do even more than just be kind to others. It's heartwarming and inspiring to see kindness. And in the furry fandom, you can see kindness often, despite the fact that us furries get shit for literally existing all the damn time.
Since the very beginning, charity has been a vital part of many furry conventions. Since the very first furry convention back in 1989, our community has raised over $3 million for charitable organizations around the world. A charity can be designated by a convention as its official charitable organization. For furries, such charities usually support the welfare of wildlife or domesticated animals, but there are exceptions. For example, back in 2005, the Memphis-based Memphit Fur Meat collected an unrecorded amount in money and resources for victims of Hurricane Katrina, many of whom were staying in the same hotel as they were. And the amount of donations can get quite high. For example, Midwest Fur Fest generated 7,664. Let me restart real quick. 764,000 dollars, while Anthrocon generated $3,097,000. Midwest Fur Fest added $10,000 to the $5,000 raised for Flint Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation by Midwest Fur Fest, 2007 attendees. And on GoFundMe, you can see just how supportive the furry fandom is towards not just charities in a general sense, but also towards each other as a fandom.
But we still don't allow that to take away the greater side of humanity within us, which is kindness and compassion, as well as tolerance. Like I said, 11 years ago, on the 20th of August, I began calling and accepting myself as a furry. And although before this I was already leaning towards furry, mainly because of my media, the styles that I enjoyed when it came to creativity, as well as just, well, me loving anthro-animal characters as a child and so on, I only started calling myself one at that date because, well, before that I didn't even know that the furry fandom was a thing. Keep in mind, the furry fandom, back in the day, back in my day, I feel old just for saying that, was so small that most people never had even heard of it existing before. It was barely known. Nothing like today. And I will say this, although the furry fandom does have its issues, like I said in a different video, I will not allow my nostalgia to blind me towards issues that do happen within the furry fandom and do need to be addressed, which I do talk about in my YouTube channel. But overall, the furry fandom for me has been like a second home. Now, I don't know if this part can be considered oversharing, considering the fact that I think I already told this in my Autism and Furries video, but I'll go ahead and reiterate the point. Back when I was still a kid, due to my Asperger's syndrome combined with other individual, private reasons, I felt extremely alienated. I felt so alone. Like it was as if I was the only member of my kind. It's like, basically, imagine if somebody that was born and grew up in planet Mars came to Earth for the very first time and tried to make social connection. The alienation, the feeling like you do not belong here. Why am I even here? I don't belong here. Why do I even bother trying to talk? Like, why am I here? All of this, it becomes such a nightmare to deal with, mentally speaking. This, combined with my depression at the time, was really difficult. But over time, as I interacted with fellow furries, it did see a decrease because you start to realize you're not the only one that is a bit on the weird side. You're not the only one with Asperger's syndrome. You're not the only one with social skills that are about on the same level as a fucking turtle. Like, you're not alone. There are people like you out there. And it's such a relief to know that. Even if you don't get to speak with them in real life, it's still a relief because you realize you're not alone. There are those like you out there that understand exactly what that feels like. Some have even went through even worse difficulties than I have. Which reminds you to appreciate yourself, you know? Don't immediately think that you have the worst situation. Oh no, there is somebody that is even worse off than you are. So be grateful for what you have. Which is a great reminder, and again, it's a feeling that is so difficult to describe. It's like bliss, but not truly. It's... man, I don't know how to explain it.
This clip from Gabriel Iglesias is pretty much, pretty much explains it pretty well.
You are going to see some beautiful things. You are going to see some amazing things. You are gonna see some sad, depressing things and some real horrible things. Overall, it's a well-balanced trip.
The furry fandom in a nutshell.
But yeah, again, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I do hope to see you later on again some other time. Goodbye. Oh, and take care.